My name is Kathy and I'm 24 years old. If someone had told me a year ago that my own parents would ruin the happiest day of my life, I would have laughed. But looking back now, all the signs were there, I just didn't want to see them. For as long as I can remember, my family revolved around my younger sister, Madison. She was the shining star, beautiful, outgoing, adored by everyone. Our parents treated her like she could do no wrong. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the practical, responsible daughter who never caused trouble, but somehow never got any praise either. If Madison got a B, it was an accomplishment. If I got an A, it was expected. That's just how it always was. After high school, I moved out as soon as I could. It wasn't rebellion, it was survival. I rented a small apartment in Charleston and started working part-time while studying economics at college. My parents insisted that I choose a serious degree, fashion design. The thing I actually loved was out of the question. That's not a real career, my father said. You need something stable, my mother added. They said it so often that I stopped arguing and just gave in. But after I graduated and got a job at a small firm crunching numbers all day, the hollowness hit me. Every morning, I'd look in the mirror and feel like I was living someone else's life. So one night, I made a decision. I enrolled in evening classes at an art and design school using my own savings. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not Madison. It was mine, my secret rebellion. That's when I met Jason. We met at one of those dull networking parties thrown by college friends, people pretending to enjoy being adults while silently resenting it. I'd planned to leave early until Jason struck up a conversation about modern art. It turned into hours of talking about travel dreams and everything in between. He listened in a way no one else ever had. When I told him I'd secretly been studying fashion, he didn't call it reckless. He smiled and said life's too short to live someone else's dream. I didn't fall for him instantly. It was slower than that, deeper. But a year later, when he got his first big paycheck and surprised me with a small velvet box at dinner, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. We spent weeks dreaming about the wedding. Nothing extravagant, just something beautiful and ours. We found the perfect venue, Magnolia Gardens, an old estate surrounded by flowers, where sunlight spilled through oak trees like magic. The deposit was massive, $28,000, but we worked hard and paid every cent. It felt like a promise to ourselves that we could build something real without our parents' control. Of course, I still had to tell them. I remember dialing my mom's number late one evening, rehearsing my words in my head. "Mom," I said softly, "I have some news. Jason proposed. We're getting married." There was silence. Then her voice cool and measured. "You're rushing into this, Kathy." "What?" "No. We've been together for—" "You barely visit us anymore," she cut in. "And now you're cutting yourself off completely." Before I could answer, my father took the phone. His tone was firm, almost formal. "Without my blessing, you have no right to get married." I froze. I wanted to scream that it was my life, that I wasn't a teenager anymore, but I didn't. Instead, I said, "Jason wants to meet you both. He wants your blessing. Can we set a date?" "We'll see," my father said, and hung up. Weeks passed. Every time Jason and I tried to set up a visit, they'd cancel. Sometimes at the last minute, sometimes without explanation. It became almost absurd. Jason joked once, maybe they'll finally meet me at the wedding. We laughed, but deep down I knew something darker was brewing. Then one morning, everything shattered. It was a Saturday, 6:30 a.m. My phone started ringing on the nightstand. I squinted at the screen. Dad. He never called me. I answered groggily. "Hello." His voice was sharp, urgent. "Come home immediately. Why? What happened?" He hung up. I sat up, heart pounding. For a moment, I thought someone had died. Jason stirred beside me, half asleep. "Everything okay? I don't know," I whispered. "Dad said to come home." He sounded off. I threw on jeans, grabbed my keys, and drove the 2 hours to my parents' house, my stomach twisting the entire way. Every terrible scenario ran through my head: an accident, a heart attack, something with Madison. But when I arrived, the house was perfectly calm. No ambulances, no chaos. Just my parents sitting in the living room like it was a lazy Sunday morning. Madison was on the couch scrolling her phone. My father gestured to a chair. "Sit down, Kathy." Confused, I did. "What's going on?" "You said it was urgent." My mother crossed her arms. "We need to talk about your wedding." "My wedding?" I blinked. "You called me at 6:30 for this." "We're not going to support this spectacle," my father said flatly. For a few seconds, I just stared. What spectacle your wedding, my mother replied as if it were obvious. I felt heat rush to my face. I never asked you to pay for anything. Jason and I already. It doesn't matter, Dad interrupted. We don't approve. You're making a mistake. You've never even met him, I snapped. You've canceled every time we tried. You don't know him. We know enough, Mom said. You're too young. You're not ready for marriage. I turned to Madison, hoping for some kind of sanity, but she was grinning, almost mocking. Maybe you'll get lucky next time, she said, laughing. Something inside me went cold. In that moment, it clicked. They didn't want me happy. They wanted control. My so-called family had dragged me out of bed at dawn just to humiliate me. I stood up. My voice was calm, almost too calm. Got it. Then I walked out. I didn't look back as I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly they hurt. I wasn't crying. I was done crying for them. But inside, something heavy shifted. Halfway home, my phone buzzed with an email notification. I pulled into a gas station and checked it. Subject: wedding venue, cancellation confirmation. My heart dropped. I opened it and read every word twice. Magnolia Gardens had received a formal cancellation request from the client. According to their policy, the deposit was non-refundable. I froze. $28,000 are gone. I immediately called Jason. He answered alarmed. What's wrong? Did you cancel the venue? What? No. Why would I? Someone did. They said it came from us. That's impossible, he said. We both have to sign. Call them. My hand shook as I dialed Magnolia Gardens. Hello, this is Kathy Young, I said, forcing my voice steady. Someone canceled my booking. That's a mistake. Yes, the administrator replied. The request was submitted yesterday, signed by you and your parents. My parents. My voice cracked. They don't even have access to the contract. The signatures matched what we have on file. I felt the blood drain from my face. They forged my signature, I whispered. The administrator hesitated. If that's true, you'll need to take legal action. We can't issue a refund otherwise. When I hung up, the world felt quiet, unreal. My parents hadn't just disapproved, they'd sabotaged me. They'd stolen from me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about my wedding. It was about control, and I was finally done being controlled. I sat in my car at the gas station for what felt like forever. The receipt from the coffee I hadn't even touched was still crumpled in my hand. My phone lay on the passenger seat, the Magnolia Gardens email glowing on the screen like a cruel joke. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick. My parents had actually gone this far. I wanted to believe it was some kind of misunderstanding, that maybe the venue had confused the paperwork, but deep down I knew better. I'd seen the coldness in my father's eyes that morning, the way Madison smirked like she already knew something I didn't. When I finally pulled myself together, I drove home. Jason was waiting at the door. His hair still messy from sleep worry, written all over his face. Kathy, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I walked past him into the living room and handed him my phone. Read this. He scrolled through the email, his expression darkening with every word. This can't be real. I called them, I said quietly. They said the cancellation form had my signature and my parents. Jason looked up sharply. Your parents? They weren't even on the contract. I know. My voice trembled. They forged it. He stared at me for a long time, then exhaled slowly, anger flickering beneath his calm. Okay, he said. Then we fight this. We're not letting them get away with it. His certainty steadied me, but only slightly. For the next hour, we sat together, replaying everything what my father had said, what time he called, the tone in his voice. The more we talked, the clearer it became they'd planned this. Calling me home was a distraction, a way to make sure I wasn't near my phone when the venue processed the cancellation. Jason reached for my hand. They've always tried to control you, but this is criminal. I nodded numbly. I don't even know where to start. He thought for a moment, then said, we start with a lawyer. The next morning, we sat in a quiet office downtown. Karen Mitchell, a sharp, composed woman in her 40s, listened intently as I laid everything out, the family tension, the sudden call, the cancellation. She didn't interrupt once, just took notes, and occasionally glanced at me with something between sympathy and disbelief. When I finished, she folded her hands. Kathy, this isn't just family drama. This is document forgery and fraud. If what you're saying is true, and if we can prove it, you have a strong case. How do we prove it? I asked. You'll need to collect evidence, she said. The original contract with your real signature, any communication with the venue timestamps showing you weren't involved in the cancellation. If your parents submitted anything electronically, there'll be metadata. And, she paused, we'll need to establish motive. Motive. Why they would do this, Karen said. Because right now what they did doesn't just seem controlling, it's calculated. Her words echoed in my head as Jason and I left the office. The afternoon sun hit hard, but I still felt cold inside. That night I sat on the couch surrounded by documents. Jason brought me tea, but I barely noticed. Every time I saw my parents' names, I felt another sting of betrayal. How could they have done this to their own daughter? Jason sat beside me. You think this has to do with Madison? I frowned. What do you mean? She's always been the favorite, right? Maybe your parents think if you get married, they'll lose you. Madison's business hasn't been going well lately, has it? I hesitated. She opened that salon 2 years ago. Dad bragged about it nonstop. But I haven't heard much since. Jason leaned back. Could be she's in trouble. Maybe they're covering for her and you're just collateral damage. It sounded paranoid, but something about it made sense. I remembered how my parents always dismissed my accomplishments but bragged about Madison's smallest ones. If she was failing, maybe they couldn't stand the idea of me succeeding instead. Still, I wanted proof, not theories. The next day, I called Magnolia Gardens again, asking for the time and method of the cancellation submission. The woman on the phone hesitated, then said, "It was emailed from your family's address, and a signed document was attached, dated 2 days ago at 2:13 p.m. I almost dropped my phone. 2 days ago, I was at work. Then get your work attendance records, she said gently. If you weren't the one who signed it, that'll help your case. After hanging up, I immediately emailed my office requesting the time logs. My hands shook as I typed. Jason looked up from across the room. You okay? Yeah, I said, though my voice cracked. It's just, this is actually happening. They didn't just hurt me emotionally, they stole from us. He came over, rested his hands on my shoulders, and whispered, then make them regret it. By evening, exhaustion hit me, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I kept picturing my parents sitting in that living room, calm and composed, knowing exactly what they'd done. Why go that far? Why risk legal trouble just to stop a wedding? A darker thought crept in. What if this wasn't about the wedding at all? What if there was something else, something they didn't want me to discover? I remembered small things. I'd ignored my parents' sudden home renovation last year. Their new car, the trip to Italy they took for their anniversary. My father's modest income couldn't explain all of that. The next morning, I checked my email again. My office had replied, you clocked in at 8:03 a.m. and clocked out at 5:46 p.m. on the day in question. Proof. I was at work when the cancellation happened. I sent it to Karen immediately, attaching the venue's message as well. Within minutes, she replied, excellent, keep gathering. I'll draft a preliminary fraud report. Jason kissed my forehead when I showed him the email. See, you're already winning. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Because somewhere deep down I could sense that this wasn't the end. This was just the surface. And beneath it, something was rotting. The following week was a blur of paperwork, sleepless nights, and anger I didn't know how to carry. Karen worked fast. She'd already drafted the initial fraud complaint, but she wanted one more thing: motive. Something to show why my parents would risk everything just to stop my wedding. Control alone isn't enough for a court, she told me over the phone. We need a reason that makes sense on paper. Something financial. Her words stuck in my head. And when I thought about it long enough, only one name came to mind: Madison. I hadn't talked to my sister in months. The last time I saw her, she was bragging about her salon's VIP clients, while my parents hovered around her like servants. But something about the way they'd all gone silent lately gnawed at me. That night, I called my old friend Emily, who'd been close to both of us in college. I began. I need to ask you something. It's about Madison's salon. There was a pause. Her salon, Emily said carefully. What about it? Is it doing okay? Emily hesitated, and I could hear the faint creak of her chair as she leaned closer to her phone. Kathy, you don't know. Know what? She sighed. It's a mess. She's been drowning in debt for over a year. Unpaid rent loans, maxed out cards. I heard from someone who used to work there that she's barely keeping it open. My pulse quickened. Debt. How bad I don't know exact numbers, but bad enough that your parents have been helping her out. Constantly. They even refinanced their house last summer. I sat there gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. Emily, are you sure I wouldn't say it if I wasn't? She said gently. Honestly, I thought you knew. Everyone in town's been whispering about it. When I hung up, the silence in my apartment felt deafening. I stared at the wall, my thoughts spinning. The early morning call, the venue cancellation, the spectacle they didn't want to fund. It wasn't about my wedding, it was about money. The next morning, I called Uncle Robert, my father's older brother. He was the one relative who'd always treated me like a person, not a project. When he answered, his warm voice brought back a flood of memories, weekends in his garden laughter, and stories about my late grandfather Harris. Kathy, sweetheart, he said. It's been a while. What's going on? My voice cracked. Uncle Robert, I need to ask you something about Dad and Mom, about money. There was a long pause. I was wondering when this call would come. What do you mean? He sighed heavily. Your parents have been living above their means for years. New car, new furniture, trips overseas, things they could never afford on their salaries. I warned your father once, but he brushed me off. So they really are helping Madison. Oh, much more than helping, he said bitterly. That salon of hers is a black hole. Your father's been pouring everything into it. I closed my eyes. Uncle Robert, where are they getting the money? There was silence on the other end for several seconds. Then, in a low voice, he said, Kathy, there's something you need to know. Something I probably should have told you years ago. My chest tightened. What is it? It's about your grandfather, he said. Before he passed, he set up a trust fund in your name. $275,000. It was meant to become available on your wedding day. My mind went blank. What? Yes. He told me himself. He loved you, Kathy. You were always there for him. Madison never visited, you know that. He wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. So you're saying that money still exists? I wish I could say that with certainty, Uncle Robert said. But judging by your parents' lifestyle and the constant financial strain they've been under, I'd wager they've been using it, bit by bit, for years. My breath caught. You think they've been stealing from my trust fund? I don't think, he said grimly. I know. I sank into the couch, shaking. The realization hit like a physical blow. All those vacations, the renovation, the endless money for Madison's failing business. It hadn't come from their pockets, it had come from mine. Can you prove it? I finally asked. I can help you try, he said. I still have access to some of the old estate records, and I remember the bank your father used when the trust was created. I felt tears sting my eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from fury. They've been stealing from me since I was 18, I whispered. Kathy, Uncle Robert said softly. I should have told you sooner. I didn't think they'd go this far. Your father always believed he could borrow from the trust and put it back. But with Madison's debts, it spiraled out of control. I wiped my eyes, my voice shaking. I'm going to find everything. Every dollar they took. I'll expose it all. That's my girl, he said quietly. You have your grandfather's fire. That night, I went through every old family photo album, searching for clues, dates, renovations, vacations, anything that didn't line up with their income. For the first time, I saw the pattern clearly. Every major expense they'd made coincided with milestones in my life. College graduation, my first apartment, my engagement. Every time I took a step forward, they'd taken money out of my future. Jason came home from work to find me surrounded by papers, eyes red but determined. What did you find? He asked carefully. I looked up at him, voice steady. Proof of motive, which is... They weren't just trying to stop the wedding, I said. They were trying to stop the trust fund from activating. If I got married, the money would have to be transferred to me officially. And then their secret would have been exposed. Jason froze, realization dawning on his face. So they forged your signature. To buy time. Exactly, I said. They needed to cancel the wedding before I found out. The room fell silent. Jason walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. Then we'll take everything from them, he said. Every cent they stole. I nodded, my throat tight. This isn't just about the wedding anymore. It's about justice. But deep inside, another emotion stirred something colder than anger, heavier than grief. It was the first flicker of revenge. The next few days blurred into a single exhausting rhythm. Eat little sleep, less chase-proof. Karen called almost daily, her tone clipped and precise. If they've been accessing your trust fund, there has to be a trail. Banks leave fingerprints, Kathy. We just have to follow them. Uncle Robert helped more than I could have hoped. He still had some of Grandpa's old estate files, yellowed pages, notarized letters, bank correspondence. We started piecing them together late one night over a video call. His study light flickered behind him, illuminating shelves of dusty ledgers. I found the original trustee bank, he said, sliding papers into the camera view. It was with First Atlantic Financial. Your father was listed as temporary custodian until your wedding day, only to safeguard it. No withdrawals permitted without dual authorization from both the trustee and you. Which means he needed my signature, I murmured. Uncle Robert's lips thinned, or something that looked like it. The realization hit hard. The forged signature on the wedding cancellation wasn't an isolated crime, it was practice. The next morning, Jason drove me downtown to meet Karen. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. She looked up as we entered, eyes sharp. I've reviewed your documents, she said. Your uncle's information is valuable. We'll subpoena the bank for transaction records. She pushed a folder toward me. In the meantime, we'll start cataloging every suspicious expense your parents have made, vacations, renovations, business transfers, anything inconsistent with their income. Jason flipped through the sheets, jaw tightening. There's a lot here. Karen nodded. We'll need to show a pattern, years of misuse. Courts respond to consistency. And Kathy, when this goes to trial, they'll fight back hard. You'll need to be ready. I am, I said quietly, though part of me trembled. That night, I spread the financial statements across our dining table. It looked like a crime scene, numbers instead of blood, receipts instead of clues. I highlighted every major purchase that matched my uncle's suspicions. $18,600, home remodel, exterior decking. $42,000 Madison salon launch capital. $12,000 European anniversary trip. Each withdrawal lined up neatly with entries from the trust fund logs that Uncle Robert had scanned. The dates matched perfectly. My parents hadn't even tried to hide it. When Jason saw the total, he whistled low. They burned through more than $200,000. I stared at the figures until the numbers blurred. That money was supposed to be my start in life, Grandpa's gift. They used it like an ATM. Jason reached across the table, covering my hand. We're going to make them pay it back. All of it. By the weekend, Karen had what she called a solid foundation. We filed the lawsuit, forgery, fraud, and embezzlement. Seeing my parents' names printed on the legal documents felt surreal, almost grotesque. They were no longer just mom and dad, they were defendants. When the court summons was served, everything changed. My phone, silent for weeks, suddenly wouldn't stop buzzing. First came the text from my father. How dare you, after everything we've done for you? Then my mother called. When I didn't answer, she left a voicemail. Kathy, please, don't do this. You'll destroy our family. Think of your sister. I deleted it without listening to the end. That evening, Madison called too. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. What do you want, Madison? You've lost your mind, she hissed. Mom's been crying for days. Dad can barely sleep. How could you drag them into court? They forged my signature, I said. They stole from me. You think I should just let that go? It's family, she snapped. You don't take family to court. No, I said quietly. But family doesn't steal your life savings either. There was a pause, then a bitter laugh. You always were dramatic. Before I could respond, she hung up. The following week, Uncle Robert and I met in person for the first time in months. He handed me a thick envelope. Copies of your grandfather's letters, he said. He wrote these before setting up the trust. Read this one. The letter was dated 12 years earlier. Grandpa's handwriting was steady and deliberate. For my granddaughter, Kathy, who carries kindness without asking for reward. I know her parents will favor the easier path, but she must learn the value of her own work. This trust will be hers when she builds a family of her own, so that love, not approval, will be the foundation she stands on. By the time I finished reading, my throat had tightened. He knew, I whispered. He knew what they were like. Uncle Robert nodded sadly. Your grandfather saw things the rest of us pretended not to. He trusted your father to do the right thing. He was wrong. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, I'll testify, Kathy. I'll tell the court everything. Back home, Jason was waiting with takeout and 2 glasses of wine. Karen says the preliminary hearing's in 3 weeks, he said. You ready for that? As ready as I can be, I murmured, opening the folder again. But even as I organized the evidence, doubt started creeping in. Was I doing this because it was right? Or because I wanted them to hurt the way they'd hurt me? I thought of Mom crying in that voicemail, Dad shouting in his text messages, Madison's scornful tone. The image twisted inside me, anger mixed with guilt, guilt mixed with defiance. Jason noticed the look on my face and sat beside me. "Don't let them confuse you," he said softly. "They taught you that loving them meant obeying them. That's not love, Kathy. That's control." I nodded slowly, though the ache in my chest didn't fade. 2 nights later, an email arrived from Karen at 11:17 p.m. Subject update from First Atlantic. They've confirmed unauthorized withdrawals from your trust account over the past 5 years. Signatures inconsistent with your records. We'll have certified copies by morning. This is the breakthrough we needed. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Proof. Tangible proof. The foundation of their lies was crumbling. For the first time in months, I let myself smile. It wasn't joy. It was something colder, sharper vindication. But beneath that flicker of satisfaction, there was a strange heaviness, too. Because I knew once this reached court, there'd be no going back. The daughter they'd tried to erase was about to become their downfall. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and old paper, a place where truth felt heavy, and people forgot how to breathe. I hadn't seen my parents in almost 6 months, not since that morning they called my wedding a spectacle. But when I walked into that courtroom there, they were sitting side by side at the defendant's table, looking smaller than I remembered. My father's shoulders, once squared, with authority, were slightly hunched. My mother twisted a tissue in her hands, her eyes darting everywhere except toward me. Madison sat in the row behind them, arms crossed, chin lifted, as if she were attending a theater performance she already knew the ending to. Jason squeezed my hand as we took our seats. His calm presence grounded me. My lawyer, Karen Mitchell, sat to my left, files organized neatly in front of her. She whispered, "Breathe. You've already done the hard part. Today is just truth catching up." The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The proceedings began. Karen started methodically. She walked the court through the timeline, my engagement, the venue, booking, the sudden cancellation, the forged signature. She projected a copy of the contract onto the courtroom screen, zooming in on my real signature, then the forgery. "Notice the slant of the R in Kathy," she pointed out. "The original shows a curved tail. The forged one cuts sharply upward, a detail any handwriting analyst would recognize as a mismatch." The judge nodded. My parents' lawyer objected, claiming family misunderstanding, but Karen silenced him with the next exhibit, the bank records. Lines of transactions filled the screen, withdrawals from my trust fund, each signed in my father's name, supposedly with my consent. Karen's voice was calm but cutting. These funds were restricted until my client's wedding day, yet over the course of 5 years, nearly $230,000 was siphoned out for unauthorized personal use. Each withdrawal corresponds with major family purchases, vacations, home renovations, and business loans for their younger daughter, Madison. Madison shifted in her seat, jaw tightening. Karen continued. "This wasn't a mistake. It was systematic." She paused, then turned toward my parents. "Would either of you like to explain these withdrawals?" The courtroom went still. My father cleared his throat, his voice low and defensive. "I managed the trust on Kathy's behalf. It was meant for family needs. We always planned to pay it back." Karen didn't even blink. "Did you have legal authorization to manage the trust?" He hesitated. "I'm her father." "That's not authorization," she replied. "It's an excuse." My mother's voice broke through, trembling. "We never meant to hurt her. We just needed help." Madison's salon. Karen cut her off gently but firmly. "Mrs. Young, you forged your daughter's signature on a legal document to cancel her wedding and conceal your embezzlement. That's not help. That's deception." My mother began to cry softly. Madison leaned forward, whispering something into her ear, but my father's face hardened. "You don't understand," he snapped. "That money was ours as much as hers. We raised her, paid for her education." Karen's tone remained icy. "So you believe parenthood entitles you to theft?" The judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Young, please answer directly." My father's jaw clenched. "We didn't think she'd find out." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Jason's grip on my hand tightened. I felt his pulse race against mine. Karen looked at me, then back at the judge. No further questions. When Uncle Robert took the stand, I felt a lump rise in my throat. He held his posture straight, but spoke softly. "I warned my brother years ago," he said. "Our father, Kathy's grandfather, set that trust up to protect her from exactly this kind of manipulation. Harris loved Kathy deeply. She spent every weekend at his house helping him in the garden while the rest of us were too busy. He wanted her to have freedom." Karen asked, Did Mr. and Mrs. Young have permission to access that trust? None, he said firmly. They betrayed both their father's memory and their daughter's future. My father glared at him, but Uncle Robert didn't flinch. When he stepped down, he gave me a small, reassuring nod. Then it was my turn. Standing before the court, I felt exposed, but strangely steady. I never wanted any of this, I said, my voice echoing slightly. I just wanted my parents to love me enough to be happy for me. When they called my wedding a spectacle, I thought it was cruel. But when I found out they'd stolen from me, when I realized they forged my name to protect their lies, I understood something. Love without respect isn't love, it's ownership. The room was silent. Even the judge seemed to soften. Karen rested a hand on my shoulder. Thank you, Kathy. After closing arguments, the judge took a long pause before speaking. The evidence is clear. Mr. and Mrs. Young, you unlawfully accessed your daughter's trust and forged her signature in an attempt to conceal your actions. The court rules in favor of the plaintiff. You are hereby ordered to restore the full balance of the trust fund, pay restitution, for the venue deposit and cover all legal fees. You have 30 days to comply or face criminal charges. My mother gasped. My father's face went pale rage simmering behind his eyes. Jason exhaled beside me, relief and disbelief mingling. Karen gave a small, triumphant smile. When court adjourned, I stood in the hallway feeling the weight of it all finally sink in. The noise of people leaving echoed faintly, but in my head it was quiet. That's when I heard my father's voice behind me. This isn't over. I turned slowly. He stood a few feet away, jaw tight, eyes cold. I'm filing an appeal, he said. You've humiliated this family, Kathy. I met his stare. You did that yourself. He opened his mouth, but I walked away before he could say another word. Jason followed his hand, slipping into mine. Outside, the sunlight was blinding. It felt strange to see the sky again, after weeks buried under courtrooms and evidence files. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then Jason whispered, "It's done." "Not yet," I said quietly, "but it will be." He looked at me confused. "They'll try to fight back," I said, staring at the courthouse steps. "They always do. But no matter what happens now, I'm not afraid anymore." And for the first time in years, I meant it. 2 months later, the court rejected my father's appeal. Just like that, everything they'd built on lies collapsed. The trust fund was restored to my name. The wedding venue refunded the deposit once the settlement cleared. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't living in my parents' shadow, I was standing in my own light. Jason and I decided to rebook Magnolia Gardens. We picked a spring date this time when the flowers would be in full bloom and the air would smell like new beginnings. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone anymore. It was about reclaiming something that was ours joy. The morning of the wedding, the sunlight poured through my window like a soft promise. My dress hung by the door, a gown I had designed myself. Every stitch was deliberate, every fold a quiet rebellion against the people who once told me fashion wasn't a real career. Jason waited for me at the altar beneath the same old oak trees that had stood there through centuries of storms. When I walked down that path, my heart didn't ache for the people who weren't there. My parents weren't invited. Madison wasn't either. For once, the silence of their absence felt like peace, not emptiness. Uncle Robert stood in the front row, his eyes gleaming with quiet pride. Emily was beside him, smiling through tears. Jason's family welcomed me as one of their own. His mother hugged me before the ceremony and whispered, "He's been waiting for someone like you." When Jason saw me in the dress I'd made, he laughed softly, tears in his eyes. "You designed this?" I nodded. "From scratch." He shook his head in disbelief. "Of course you did." The ceremony itself felt like a dream I didn't want to wake from. When we said our vows, my voice didn't shake. When we kissed, the crowd cheered, and the old trees rustled as if the world itself was exhaling with me. For the first time, I felt free not from my family, but from the need to be loved by people who never knew how. After the wedding, I asked Uncle Robert for one final favor. I didn't want to reach out to my parents myself, but I needed closure. I handed him a short note, sealed in an unmarked envelope. He called later that evening. "I delivered it," he said. They read it together. Your mother cried. Your father didn't say a word. "What did the note say?" Jason asked me gently that night as we packed for our short honeymoon. "Just one sentence," I replied. "The spectacle is over." The months that followed were strangely quiet. I finished my last semester at design school and began sketching ideas for my first collection pieces that told my story through fabric and form. My professors loved them. One even called them raw and cinematic. Jason and I moved into a small house outside Charleston. It wasn't luxurious, but it was ours. The garden bloomed with wildflowers, and sometimes I'd sit on the porch with my sketchbook, letting the afternoon light spill across the page. Then one evening, Jason came in holding his phone, frowning. "Your mom's name just popped up. She found my number somehow." I froze. "Don't answer." But the phone rang again, then again, until finally I sighed and took it. "Hello." Her voice was trembling. "Kathy." "Oh, thank God. Please just hear me out. I thought we agreed we had nothing left to say. Please," she begged. "We're in trouble. Your father lost his job. Madison's salon went bankrupt. We can't pay the mortgage. We just need a little help, just until things get better." A bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. "You want money from me?" "We're your parents," she cried. "We made mistakes, but we're still your family. We're desperate." In the background, I heard my father's voice firm, even now. "Tell her we'll pay her back. Tell her it's a loan." I closed my eyes. Every memory came flooding back, the forged signature, the courtroom, the laughter, the morning they called my wedding a spectacle. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm, almost gentle. "You called my wedding a spectacle. You forged my name. You stole the future Grandpa left for me, and now you want help. Kathy, please." "The spectacle is over," I said quietly. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up before she could respond and blocked the number. Then I handed Jason his phone, my hand steady. That night the house was still. Jason wrapped an arm around me on the couch. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just done." He smiled faintly. "Good. You deserve peace." Outside, the cicadas hummed, and the warm wind brushed against the curtains. I thought about everything my childhood, the constant comparisons, the years I spent trying to earn a kind of love that was never meant for me. Now I didn't need it. A few weeks later, I finished my final project for design school, a collection I titled Reclaimed. Each piece was inspired by a chapter of my life. Thread by thread, a story of loss, discovery, and freedom. When I presented it at the showcase, the audience applauded, and my professor whispered, "You've turned pain into art." As the applause faded, I felt something settle in me. Not triumph, peace. I walked home that evening, under a sky streaked with gold. The past was behind me, but it would always be part of me, the quiet ache that had shaped who I was. When I got home, Jason was waiting on the porch with 2 glasses of wine. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass. I smiled, clinking mine against his. To finally being free. We sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, and for the first time there was no noise in my head, no guilt, no anger, no need to explain. Just stillness. This was my life now, my real life, and I was finally free.